a best-selling new release author, as well as a life and recovery coach. I was inspired to host this podcast to continue to share my story, but to ultimately connect with others on a more soulful level, as communication is key to understanding ourselves and those around us. We're going to chat about substance use, parenting, business, setbacks, but ultimately breakthroughs. So let's dive in. Take what you need and leave the rest. Thanks for being here. Now let's have a chat. And welcome everyone to today's episode of Let's Have a Chat. Today I have David Mahler, and we've literally only been on the line for like 4 seconds. The last time that we spoke, he actually brought me to tears. So I don't want to get into this story. I'm going to let David share the story. He is the founder of Ground Zero Recovery Coaching, also a certified addiction recovery coach, and as well a certified facilitator of addiction awareness. Addiction and recovery is, hits me hard. And you have a powerful story that, is I don't know, I'm at a loss for words here just because I know what's coming. I've got the tissue. Thank you for being on the show today. Going, headstrong into this one. So thank you. And I appreciate you sharing your time with me today, David.
I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Where do we start? That's always the loaded question, right?
Right.
And I mean, ultimately it's up to you where you want to share your story, where you want to begin with your story. I'm Canadian and you're in the States. You're a Ground Zero,
I'm a 9/11 survivor.
9/11 survivor. Thank you. Those are the words.
Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah. That's always the we're mentioning and telling a few little stories about, the fun that happens on Wall Street. And
Everybody asks that.
the movies are that's what it's like in the movies, right?
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of truth to that. So were you into the substances and the alcohol while you were working, while you were
Plenty
there?
of alcohol, very free flowing. Alcohol was everywhere we went. How the night started, how the night finished. And then other substances came into play when you wanted to stay up late and running around like crazy. And things that happened in movies like The Wolf of Wall Street definitely did happen. You know, I was living that life late 80s, early 90s. And it got out of hand for a while. And it's funny, like I never thought of myself as being addicted. I was always I was the husband of somebody who had a substance problem. And then my daughter started getting into the substance. First it was just weed, and then it got worse from there. But I can remember this was around the same time as 9/11. My daughter got in trouble in school for weed, and my ex-wife, she went to punish her. You're grounded, this and that. And she marched right into my garage, pulled out a big bag of weed out of one of my old golf things, and said, "How you punishing me? This is my father's." So
How did
that
you
was
feel in that moment?
I was crushed. I really was. I didn't know what to say. I thought nobody knew, but everybody knew. And so that was the last day I smoked weed.
When you
Pretty
got
much,
busted.
yeah. I was like, how can I be a hypocrite and be a parent to her and say, you really can't be doing it if I'm doing it. And by that time in my life, I would say recreational drugs that were going on wasn't something that I was doing anyway. Was I still drinking? Yes. Alcohol was never like my big substance of choice. So I could take it or leave it.
Okay. When did you discover that there was a problem and something needed to be done about it? You got busted by your daughter.
Yep.
And you quit weed that day?
I quit that day. It was like I could just stop. It wasn't like it was holding on to me, but I was able to just stop. And then at that point, things were fairly quiet in my house. My ex-wife got a hold of her drinking issues, and she wasn't drinking.
This was all post.
This is all right after 9/11.
Okay.
I mean, within a year.
Because I was going to ask, how did 9/11, PTSD aside, how did that affect you with the use of substances? You would think many people would use substances as a crutch to deal with what happened.
I think parent mode kicked more into gear than substance. I was more concerned with what was going on with my daughter. And, I was always a very hard worker, and still am, I think. And I dove into work as my way of deflecting things and not thinking about everything. And I still think I use work as that for that as well.
I think many of us do use work as a crutch for sure. And
for me, if there's a loss or if something happens, I just have to keep busy, and work was the thing.
You had a few significant losses in your life.
Yeah, so it's a tough situation. So my daughter started her drug use escalated about a year after that. We lived in a quiet town. I didn't want to raise my kids in Brooklyn thinking, oh, we moved to the suburbs of New Jersey, everything's going to be okay. In the suburbs of New Jersey where we lived, the kids had a lot of time, some had money, and they would go to house parties instead of being like at a recreation center playing sports. And at these house parties, they were raiding medicine cabinets. Whose mother or grandmother had pills in the cabinets. And, a lot of these kids became addicted to drugs. And my daughter being one of them. Again, as that father who thought he could fix everything, I thought I could fix my daughter. Dana, we got this. You're going to stop. I'm going to get you to a program. You're going to go to outpatient, this and that. I didn't know nothing about the industry at that time, how rehab worked, what levels of treatment, because there's so many different levels. And we just had her in an outpatient after school, and it wasn't enough. She went away to a program in Florida, which was probably not the level of treatment she needed.
Meaning she needed more?
She needed more. This was very free-flowing. I think it was somebody who had gone to, say, a good 90-day program, because I don't think 28 days does much for anybody. And it was too much freedom. And she ended up starting to use harder drugs at one point. Things were getting crazy.
In the program.
Yeah, in and out of the program. Getting thrown out of that program, having to move it to another. And at this time, I'm learning about the industry. And, way better places for her to be. But she was on a journey that I couldn't fix. I could just get educated myself and learn how I could help her, but I couldn't fix it. So I just became like a support to her. She was in and out of, I say 15 rehabs over a 3 to 5 year period. It could have been 20. And she would go long times of not using, but in between each rehab she was using. And she's clean. Obviously, a lot of people are able to stay clean while they're in. Unfortunately, some people become like that institutionalized, like, okay, I'm okay when I'm in a facility, but when I come out, I may use and find myself back in the facility again. And she went through that for a while. But there was one treatment center that she got clean. There was a couple that ran it. When her insurance benefits ran out, they said, Dana doesn't have to leave. She could stay as long as she wants to be here. And then they put us through school to become a CASAC, and she started working in the industry. So, we went through a good period of time with her.
Did she become like a recovery coach? What was her contribution?
She worked as a behavioral health tech and a peer. And she would take people she worked at a women's facility at the end.
Like a peer support worker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was great in that facility because she knew all the ins and outs. She knew how to, help people get into treatment. And she spent about 7 years clean. A lot of years went by during this time. And I was asked to help run a Christian 12-step program. I become one of the leaders. I didn't know if it was for me or not. In my mind, I never really had it because I was able to just quit like day one when I wanted to. I didn't think I really had an issue. And I remember calling my daughter and saying, Dana, they want me to help. They're giving us this training. I don't know if it's for me. She's like, Daddy, you got to stay. She was someone like me who's going to walk through the door. You've been through every wall with me. So I'm like, Mom's going to come through the door and you could talk to them. So I said, all right, I took her advice and I stayed. And sure enough, people came through just like, and people like her mom and people like myself. And I learned a lot about myself being there. And during that time, I went to school to become an addiction recovery coach because I wanted to take it a step further. I was really motivated to try to help people just because I saw what my daughter went through, what my ex-wife went through, what people in my industry go through that, couldn't get free from drugs. And that was really great. And I became a coach and I didn't know what to do with it, what I wanted to do. I was certified for a couple of years before I actually used it, but I still help run this program every Thursday night, which I actually run today. So then I go to school now to become a certified facilitator of addiction awareness. I'm thinking,
what does that mean? That's a full mouth right there. What does that mean?
So it means that I can take my credentials, go to HRs of different corporations, maybe management, and say, listen, like in the Wall Street area, they train us on sexual harassment, money laundering, everything that goes on. I would train the office on substance awareness, what to look for in your coworkers if they have a problem. How do we break the stigma? How do we break, the name calling or the people being afraid of coming forward guys are lurking in the shadows, they're using, and they're saying to themselves, I want to get better, but if I tell HR, I'm going to get fired.
Right.
Or they're going to be looked upon as being weak or not a good worker when they possibly could be a very good worker. They just need some help.
Now, is that true? If I tell HR that I'm struggling and I'm suffering with a substance abuse issue, will I get fired from my job?
No, because you can't get fired for that. People get
Okay.
fired for all the dumb things that go along with it.
Right.
They don't tell anybody they have a problem. So they're coming in late a lot, or they're absent, or they show up, but they're absent in the mind, or their productivity is going down, or they may have an attitude and say the wrong thing to people. And this is when they get fired.
Okay.
You don't get fired for coming forward. Companies have an obligation, first of all, for confidentiality and also to get you help. So for me, getting in companies, I reach out to a lot of HRs. I do free substance awareness trainings in places like churches, so that, maybe there's somebody sitting in the congregation that says, oh yeah, I'd like to have this guy at my company. This would be useful. I've done it free for like the Boy Scouts of America, their parents. Again, I feel there's businessmen sitting in that audience. I think once they hear it, people get more comfortable with it. Recently, I've added to my presentations, like what to look for,
That was my next question. What should we be looking for?
Just the signs. Like I tell parents in these meetings, if your child comes home with a young adult, don't attack them with the accusation right away, like accusing right away. How about have a 5-minute conversation? Look them in the face. How was your day today? Just engage. And while you're engaging, look for the signs. Are the eyes red? Are they nodding? Are they falling asleep? Are they erratic? But, don't let them just go to their bedroom, and sneak into their room, get right by you without having a nice conversation for 5 minutes where you may learn a lot. You may learn what they're up to, what they're doing. Do they smell like alcohol? You smell weed on them? All different things. Are the eyes
That's
red,
scary.
bloodshot?
Yeah. I've got 4 children, and I've had to have the conversation a couple times out of, and because of sometimes who they hang out with, right? You like to think, oh, my child would never do that, but peer pressure is a thing, and they can
Oh,
be
yeah.
sucked in so easily. You had mentioned earlier about supporting your daughter, but when we had spoken previously to today, you talk about codependency. Do you feel that there was some codependency in a relationship with your daughter?
Yeah, definitely codependency. I found that first codependency enabling with my first wife. When she had an alcohol problem, we were young parents at that time. Wine was a thing. I'd be running to the liquor store to buy the one, just not to have the arguments in the house, not to have the blow-ups, the arguments I didn't want the neighbors to hear. But where I grew up, what happened in your house stayed in your house. You didn't tell anybody. But I think when we got into big arguments, neighbors knew. On the outside, we looked like that perfect family. We were having craziness in our house, especially when the alcohol started.
That sounds so familiar. My husband, he was the one who, like, do you want some more wine? Like, one bottle would be down for me of the wine, and then, do you want some more wine? He would ask, I think, out of generosity, but I think he would also just ask knowing that if he didn't go get the wine, then, like, all hell would sort of break loose, right? I just had to keep on going with booze.
With the codependency with my daughter, I think it came more with money issues, writing checks for different things that she messed up with, paying people back for her that she had problems with.
So supporting her and saving her.
Yes,
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to my story about, so my daughter told me, you got that, you got to stay. And then I went to school, right? I said for the certified addiction awareness. So then COVID hit. So my daughter went out and used. She was clean for 7 years. And she was living with me in the house that I lived in only on the weekends. I split my time between New York and New Jersey. And she came to me. She told me I messed up. And she was working in a facility at that time, actually helping women get their children back, taking them to court dates. And I told her she couldn't live with me. She had to go stay at a woman's like halfway type house after she came out of treatment. And then COVID hit, and the halfway house place called me and they said, we need they didn't know what to do. Nobody knew what to do, how to handle things. And they said, we need some people to go home and quarantine. And I was afraid. I was like, do you think Dana can come home? And they said, Dana's been in the industry. She runs all our groups. She don't miss a meeting. And if anybody can go home, it's her. So I got some groceries in the house. I got the house ready for her. And that was on a Friday. We had a plan Saturday. She was going to come home. She wanted to spend some time with her girlfriend that day. She never made it home. Dana went out and used that night. Her girlfriend called me on Sunday morning and told me she found Dana in the bathroom, that Dana had what she called OD'd. And I lost my daughter that night. It was 2020. I don't think it was an OD. She wasn't like she was using a lot of drugs. I think it was what they call fentanyl poison these days. Because, every street drug is laced with fentanyl. Even today, marijuana bought on the street can be sprinkled with fentanyl. It's not uncommon. And you're playing Russian roulette with your life. Every drug has fentanyl in it. It just matters how much. And they say it takes the littlest amount to kill you. So I'm a big proponent of that. You are gambling. People say, well, my addiction is this, my addiction is that. Every addiction is some sort of gambling. Because every day that you go out there and you buy from some on the street, if your addiction happens to be, say, running around with women, this and that, and you're not being protected, you could die from that. If you're not being conscious of what you're doing, every addiction is a gamble.
Thank you for sharing this story about your daughter. Of course, there's no words, and I'm sorry we'll never cut it and we'll never bring your daughter home. My condolences do go out to you, and I want to thank you. Here I am. I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. Losing your daughter in the manner that you did. I see it gives you life and purpose to move forward in her honor and in what she was doing with her life before this accident happened and took her life. So you're doing incredible work and making an impact. And I think that's why you applied to be on the show. And you're like, I have a story and a message, and right. Your story matters and your message matters. And when I started this, when I wrote my book, I woke up one day and changed my mind after getting sober. It was like, if I can just reach one person and help them, then I feel I've done my job, right? And I feel like you're in a position, you're not out there to make $1 million. You're not trying to get all the yachts and do all the things. You just want to share a message. We've been hearing this. I want to thank you so much for sharing.
The playing field has changed because let's say 20 years ago when people were doing drugs and they shouldn't have been doing them then, most people would say we're getting prescription drugs and abusing them and such like that. Not that people don't do that today. Mm-hmm. But now people are going to the streets a lot. And like I said, that fentanyl is out there. And I showed a slide in an awareness training the other day, and 100,000 people died in 2023 from an overdose in the U.S. 75,000 of those people died from fentanyl.
Why are dealers trying to kill their clients or their customers?
I think that there's a few reasons. I think they're not trying to kill them. I think they're trying to make the drug that they're selling stronger, and there's no way of regulating it if it's good or bad. I think it's cheaper to put fentanyl in it than the other compounds that they're adding to make their drugs. And I think that's the reason behind it. And then that's not to say that there isn't a problem with prescription drugs too, because there you get people that who are in such denial, and they say, well, I'm not using drugs. My doctor prescribed it. And they always say that. But meanwhile, they get a month prescription for a medication and they're done in like 2.5 weeks. They go around 10 days not knowing what to do. And those people end up going to the streets to buy drugs to try to make it through the end of the month till they get their prescription again.
Okay. Do you talk about this when you're going company to company, prescription drugs? I feel 100%. It's like an underground kind of thing, like you mentioned. Well, my doctor prescribed it.
People that are using their greatest tool is justification. Oh, my doctor wrote it. I'm okay,
Say that again. People that are using
one of the biggest tools they use is justification. My doctor wrote this for me. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
How do we get past this? In a perfect world, what's the answer?
I think people need to be better educated. Not only people that are using, I think family members can't just send somebody for help, but at the same time, they need to get help themselves. They need a support system. They need support groups. And this is not the person that say is the substance abuser. This is like the spouse, even the child, the parent. Get some help for yourself. The more educated you are, the better chance your family member is getting cured or getting well or putting the substance down.
So it's a whole family dynamic. So
It
if
affects
my
the whole
spouse,
family.
if my spouse is suffering, I can't, oh, you have a problem, you need to go. No, it's we collectively have a problem within our family unit, and
Oh, yeah,
we
there's so
need to
many
do
things that
something
go
about it
along with
together.
it. So many things go along with it. You know, households financially hit up. You know, how many households have like to remortgage the house, spend the college fund? What about if that family doesn't have those resources? You know, they could be faced with homelessness if they spend a lot of money on their child or their spouse getting well. You know, there's a lot of factors. Families break up, you know, big divorce rate, the grades go down, kids drop out. The whole house goes crazy when somebody, even if one person is using out of a whole household.
Sorry to chuckle, but it's so true. The whole house does go crazy, especially like when I was active in my alcoholism. One day it quit, and like there was just like peace and calm in the house. My oldest son was like, the house is so quiet. Like, what's going on? It's really, really weird in here. Like, I wasn't yelling. I wasn't screaming. I was going to bed at a decent hour, and I was getting up at a decent hour, and he was like literally out of his skin. He didn't understand how the craziness had stopped, but it can stop. And I think that is such an important message. You can be so deep into your addiction, and there is hope. You can get better. You absolutely can get better, but you have to want to. And
There's
some days you're not going to want
too.
to. But
You know,
school me.
people do recover. Like, you know, addictions are treatable. Addictions are preventable. You know, one of the biggest things that people think about is that it's a moral failure, but it's not a moral failure. Most of the time, addiction's a medical issue. You know, what happened to you in your childhood? What happened to you in your house? What's going on right now? Sometimes it's your family history. There's a lot of things that play into it where most people don't start out looking to be addicted to something. They think they're doing it for pleasure. Then say that takes over the dopamine in their brain. They get that pleasure center, the good feeling. And then the only way they can get it is by increasing the amount that they're using until it's never enough. And then their bodies don't produce the dopamine from, like, say, simple, enjoyable things like watching a TV show you like, or feeling safety at home, or playing a sport that you like. That goes out the window. Now the only way you get some relief in your pleasure center in your brain is by getting high. And your whole chemistry is all messed up. And if you don't use, then these people get anxiety, depression, and everything else falls into place. Now it becomes a mental health issue.
It's kind of akin to gambling. You chase the wins and you chase the losses, right? When you're
I
playing
think
with
there's some
substances
big
like
gamblers
that.
I've watched on some addiction shows that I've watched and some trainings I've done. Some of these guys actually want to lose and lose big. There's an
They
adrenaline
want to.
I watch this guy. He gets more of a buzz out of losing big than anything else. And I'm like, wow, really?
That's incredible. I've done a fair amount of gambling myself, and I can promise you, losing was never on the table for what I wanted to do. What's next for David?
I'm coaching 5 guys right now. I actually just today, I took on my 5th client today. And I'm looking to do more substance awareness in the workplace. I'm really trying to get out there. It's funny how God has a plan that I didn't have. I thought I was going to be getting, like you asked me earlier, how do you get into these companies? I thought every company I called was just going to have me, and it hasn't been so easy. But like 5 churches asked me to come and speak there, and I'm going. First of all, I'm honing my skill there. Second of all, I spoke this past Saturday in front of 50 people, and there were a lot of questions, and people asked me to add certain things. Hey, next time, would you talk about this? I got invited back already to speak at the same church to parents of their whole youth group, which is about another 50 people. I just, like you said earlier, it's something that touched me because that's my mantra. If you can reach just one, it's so important. You know, so many times people go out, they're going to save the world. I'm going to save that whole group of people. One at a time.
Yeah, don't put that pressure on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Well, I hope at least one person who listens to this episode can reach out to you, can use you as a confidant, as a support, and potentially a mentor or a peer support. Like I said, you're doing fantastic work, and I'm proud of you. I am so proud of you for what you're doing and for what, if no one's told you that today, I am so proud of you. It's just the losses that you've experienced, the 9/11 thing in and of itself. I think God has given you huge hands because he needs some help, and he chose you to do his work. And you may be questioning, God, why me? Why me? And you may never know the answer. But
No,
like
not on this side of heaven.
saying, right? Not yet, not yet. You will figure it out, hopefully, on this side. But to your beautiful children and to you, so much love. I'm sending you so much love, David, for everything that you've gone through. Absolutely incredible. You are so strong, so incredibly strong. So to anyone listening today, if you think you're having a shitty day, I want you to think about David and put him in your heart and know that you can make it through. If David can make it through, then you definitely can. 2 to 5 things, 2 to 4, 2 to 3 things, whatever, pick a number. I don't care. I love to end the episode with 2 to something. Some tips or tricks or strategies or quotes or sayings, just something that stands out in
I think it's
your
important
mind.
to redirect. If you're somebody that's having a substance use problem and the triggers are coming in, and they're going to come, how do you redirect? What do you think about that differently? What can I do differently? Can I go to the gym at that moment? Can I put on the radio and start singing? Can I call a friend? You need accountability partners. The problem with a lot of people that use, they isolate. They don't call anybody. And I think isolation kills. Get a phone list, call people that you trust. Hey, I'm having a problem. Can you meet me for a cup of coffee? Don't try to do it alone. Don't try to stay at home and say, I got this. Because that's when you really don't have it. If you think you're going to roll up your sleeves and you're going to be okay, is when you're probably going to get the most hurt. It's probably when you're going to do the most damage to yourself. That's like my biggest thing. Isolation kills. I say it over again in every group that I run, whether your thing is AA or not, because I believe all roads lead to recovery for those that want to get better. But the accountability, have somebody you can call, somebody you trust, somebody you can say, hey, I need to have a cup of coffee with you. And you can find people like that. It's not that hard, but you got to look for them.
Like even like AA does Zoom calls, Zoom meetings. You don't have to physically leave your house and go to a meeting anymore.
You can go on Zoom and not even throw your video on and just speak.
Exactly. I wasn't even actually aware of that until a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago. I was, I got sober without the help of AA. And it just from what I had heard about it, wasn't really a program that fit for my lifestyle, but I'm still curious about it being in, the recovery, world now and as an addictions and recovery coach. So I went in to look for meetings and I actually did what you said. I called, a best girlfriend of mine and I was like, would you be open to coming to an AA meeting with me? She's like, and I was like scared. I didn't even know like what she would think of me. I don't even know what my thoughts were. And she's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's go. I've done them before. Yeah. So we put these walls up and these blocks of what other people or what we think other people are going to perceive of us. And it's just bullshit that we're feeding ourselves for no reason. We didn't end up going to that AA meeting because right after I had asked her, this is where I'm getting at, I found that AA does Zoom. So I just listened in and they do a weekly thing. And there's so many based on your location. You go through the AA list and there's hundreds in a night. Hundreds. Okay, so don't do it alone. Isolation kills. I always say people need people. It is so true.
And if you're on the other side of it, you got to stop the stigma, the name calling. That guy's a drunk. That guy's a junkie. That guy's an... People got to start, not calling people names. The stigma's got to break. Can I tell a brief story?
Please do.
Yeah,
yes.
So I was volunteering as a recovery coach in a hospital. Like a volunteer thing when I first got into it. I call it systemic stigma. You see a guy come in who's like a businessman into the emergency room and they get one level of care. And then guys come in and they overdose like 5 or 10 times and they really don't get treated well. And this one guy came in and the doctor looked at him like in disgust and he was like, oh, you're back again? Why should I even help you? And, and I just stepped in. I said, do you mind if I talk to him? The doctor was like, yeah, if you think you're going to get anywhere, but basically it was like blowing me off. So I spoke to the guy. I said, do you like being talked to like that? He's like, no. I said, what about, treated that way? He's like, no. And I'm like, what about help? Do you want to get help? And I'll be honest with you, I asked him if I could pray with him. And I prayed with him first. And then he goes, I really do want help. And I said, how about we make some calls? And we got on the phone and we called what I call secular and religious recovery places, any place that would have him. And we found him a place and he was so appreciated. He was stigmatized as soon as he went in there because of how he came in 9 other times. But people got to break away from that. The language got to change. That's why it's a substance use disorder today, not addiction. Let's change the language. Nobody that's using was in kindergarten or first grade going, But, when I grow up, I want to have a substance use problem. They're somebody's child.
Absolutely. Have you connected with this person since you had met them at the hospital? Have you seen
I speak to them
where
from
they've
time
gone
to time. Yeah. They're doing okay right now. I think it's been an up and down road for them still.
Yeah. I'd like to have solace, or I'd like for you to have solace in knowing that by you interjecting that day probably is why they are doing okay right now.
Yeah.
That there's your one person, you're making an impact. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I don't know if I get to say the name of my website on your show or not.
Yeah. Where can people connect with you? Absolutely.
Yeah, so you can find me at groundzerorecoverycoaching.com. My website's out there. A lot of people find me. On my website right now is an advertisement for a free coaching session, which I just started doing.
Take it. If you're listening, take this coaching session.
Yeah, it's going to be the end of the month, the last Tuesday of the month. You just got to email me and I'll send you the Zoom link. And you don't have to turn your camera on if you don't want to. And we're going to have a coaching session, basics of recovery.
Basics of recovery. Just got to start, right? You just got to start.
So groundzerorecoverycoaching.com.
There you go. Ground zero. Yeah, there you go. Thank you for sharing your story, for sharing your time. Thank you to our listeners. All of David's contact information will be in the show notes, obviously. And as always, I hope you have the best day ever, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.